Look, Gershon Zulkin was a genius, really a genius, a very complex person. Gershon was Google before there was Google. He had a young mind. He was not fixated on what was there. I really liked him. Let's not get confused. He was a man who was hard to love. We did well. We went in 15, 20 years from a company that sold $4 million to when I left, the company sold $3 or $4 billion. The second tour of the Minister of Trade and Industry was conducted at the Elco factory. The Elco factory produces, among other things, transformers for different needs in agriculture and manufacturing, a labor that requires expert professionals. Elco was mainly engaged in the production of infrastructure products for the electricity grid in the country. Most of its products were supplied to IEC. The electricity network would not work if there wasn't a supply of quality Elco products. Gershon loved machines and factories. He was an industrialist in his soul. He was usually better acquainted with the technological matters than most of his engineers. Elco is a transformer factory. There's grease, there's dirt. He would come in a suit and tie. And when he left, the shoes were covered in tar. But the entire suit remained clean.
Not coincidentally, Gershon found his natural place as the transformer factory manager. The Zulkin family entrepreneurship gene flowed through his veins. His grandfather, Joseph Zulkin, set up the first locomotive factory in Russia, Moscow, and in Israel, the Naharaim power station. His father, Alexander Zulkin, established an electronics factory in Germany in the 1920s, and later he founded Elco, the company that developed the electricity grid in Israel in the early days of the country.
It started with Joseph, who founded a small business in Moscow. The communists rose to power, so he had to close the factory in Moscow. He established a new factory in Germany. Gershon was 6. His mother was a doctor. One day, out of the blue, the department manager told her, "You shouldn't come to the hospital today, because the Hitler Youth are coming to visit." So she took Gershon, left Germany the next day, then they emigrated to Israel. The conditions were not easy, but the family was so Zionist that they took it in good spirit. On the advice of his teachers, professors from Jerusalem, he traveled to Switzerland to study physics, and stayed there for about 5 years. He was supposed to go to be a part of Einstein's project. But then my dad said, "I didn't come as the first generation in Israel, just so the second generation will leave Israel." He listened to him and didn't go. He decided to take the factory. We got a fair employer. He cared about the employees. He always sat with the professionals. He pushed for development. To set up this factory, he went to England, to a nuclear reactor, and purchased a 600-ton bridge crane there. And the factory was built around this crane. You have no idea how proud he was, really. When guests from the IEC came, he wouldn't put them in a conference room. Take a look around. Look at this crane. Look at the transformer. Look at the winding machine. Even though it was heavy industry, it was like walking in a pharmacy. He worked longer hours than anyone else. He lived the factory. He strongly believed in blue and white industry. For me, Mr. Gershon Zulkin was a man who loved the employees on the one hand, on the other hand he was firm. I mean, he knew what he wanted. Zulkin went on the first protective strike in the state of Israel. It was something that went down in history. There was some department that thought their wages weren't fair. They wrote a collective letter saying that if they did not receive an immediate salary increase, they'll resign from work. That was Thursday afternoon. On Friday, a messenger on a Vespa came to each of them with a letter saying that their resignation was accepted. Then he himself initiated a strike in the factory and broke the matter. No one believed anyone in Israel would go on a protective strike and would not accept a strike from the employees. You know, he always told me, there's a saying that might be quite unique to him. He said to me, Effie, there's a proverb that says, respect him and suspect him. So you will do well to remember, it's always suspect him and suspect him. There was a recession in the country. The IEC had to cut budgets. Yitzhak Hofi, then CEO of the IEC, called me in Gershon and told us, the number of transformers you will supply this year is 300. That's compared to about 2,000 transformers before. We didn't know if at the end of the month there will be money to pay the employees. At this point of weakness, TAT, Aviation Accessories Industry, tried to take over the business. Also, Discount Bank at some point sold shares and betrayed his trust. It was a very challenging time of countless deliberations whether or not to sell the stocks. I remember there was tremendous stress at home and on Dad. He had to make one of the toughest decisions. We said, hold on to what your father founded. We're Israelis, we said, it'll be fine. He obtained a very generous loan from Discount Bank and his brother-in-law. On the day the takeover was set to take place, they saw that they had nothing to buy because Gershon had already bought all of the shares that remained on the stock exchange. It was no less than a revolution. Today was a turning point in the history of the Jewish people. IEC, for fraudulent reasons, decided they didn't want to buy transformers from Elco anymore. They decided they wanted to import transformers and set up a factory as well. For that, they needed an excuse. One day at breakfast, we hear Carmela Menashe in a dramatic voice, I received a report that Elco transformers are exploding. My dad, at first, I remember, was pale. He was in shock because the most important thing for him was the quality. And once again, the IEC stands in the middle of a storm, and this time it's not the weather. The division, according to the report, paid the Elco company advances for transformers that weren't delivered, and in some cases, the division also received defective transformers. It was all over the media. It was on TV. TV then was just one channel, Everyone was watching. Everything disappeared. Everything fell apart. He felt betrayed. I had never seen him as despondent as at this time. Everything that is written there in the newspaper is either radically wrong or distorted. There was a concern that this would lead to the collapse of the company. There was personal injury. He was offended by the fact that people thought he was corrupt. I am looking for the hand that's directing it, whether it's competitors or others that have caused this media circus. It was the biggest crisis of his life, and I think he never got over it. He realized two things from this crisis. One, absolute dependence on one factor, especially a regulatory factor, is a disaster. And two, over-reliance on government is a disaster. We slowly began to buy companies dealing in other areas. The motto was anything but the IEC. Someone came up with the idea of an air conditioner. It caught Gershon's attention. And we secretly developed a unit, a system. We brought models from all over the world, and we chose the most suitable one from which we could do matching. There was a huge long hall where Eliezer ben Moshe built the brand they called Elco High-Tech. Who can truly control the weather? I can, and you can too. Revolutionary air conditioner with remote control. High-Tech, Elco High-Tech. He tells those of us in management he thinks we'll sell 10,000 in the first year. At the end of the year, we sold 30,000. Until a few years ago, they would come to my office. Say, do you still have any Elco High-Tech air conditioners? He saw 10 steps ahead, something we didn't. Then came the opportunity to buy Electra. There was one Electra then. Electra was in trouble. This was the greatest agent for change. This was a very significant leap in contract work, because Electra was poorly managed by Clal. The company was clutching at straws to not collapse. And Stanger told him at the time, "You're not checking. That's the price. If you want it, buy it." For the first time, Gershon did not check. He had a gut feeling and he believed he would know what to do. And we just looked at each other and said, "Let's take the risk." In the business world, there's nothing more exciting than buying a company. The first sentence I told him after we shook hands and he said, "You are the CEO," I told him, "Gershon, you don't know what you bought. The good part is a lot better than you think, and the bad part is much worse than you think. In the electromechanical system, we are doing well, but in consumer goods, it's a huge mess. When you come in, you will understand the depths of the mess." The company was formerly a member of the Clal Group. The company did not belong to a particular person. There was no owner. The owners were Discount Bank, Hapoalim Bank, Clal Group, and so on. And here comes a man who puts his money and takes a problematic enterprise and area, and the first thing he does, he goes into the factory, walks around the factory, looks around, talks to the workers, which was not so common. I don't remember people from Clal coming to talk to the workers or to look at the factory. And first of all, what he did, he decided to build the factory from the ground up, and actually build a modern factory, and it gave an amazing feeling. Everything today that works and functions and profits began with the purchase of Electra Israel. At that time, there were a lot of privatizations in Israel. That's to say, a lot of companies started moving from the state-owned sector to the private sector. The Shechem was created for non-profit purposes, and perhaps that's the reason it suffered in recent years. Gershon was a man of the world. I think he had a vision to come and upgrade the shopping experience in Israel that was really basic in those years. What actually interested him was retail. One of the things that killed him were the Shechem canteens. He was the owner of the Shechem canteens. All the burgers in the army were Gershon's. The business made no profit, but only losses, of course. He realized quite quickly that this deal was not the best deal of his life. Now, this is a deal that could have ruined the entire group. But even when he encountered a problem, he knew how to break it down. The idea was to sell this activity to finance the losses. And he was able to sell the Shechem stores for $40 million more than they were listed in the books. Gershon taught me, in life you need 90% luck and 10% knowing you're in the lucky zone. One day, one of the people we worked with in Europe called me and told us the Airwell plant is in difficulties. Do you want to purchase it? I saw the spark in Gershon's eyes. Within 48 hours, we went to Paris. Braun was a leading company in the field of home appliances here in France. 7 factories in France, 4,000 employees. They competed against giants, against Whirlpool, against Candy, and against Arçelik. Everyone said, "It's crazy. Elco is too small a company. They know nothing. They don't have the experience of Electrolux and others like them." Gershon realized he had no chance with the price, so he told the employees that he would keep all the employees. So I came back from court, from a meeting with a receiver, and I was completely depressed. I told him, "Mr. Zalkind, we won't win. Our proposal is not good enough. The other companies are going to improve their offers, and because we are a small company, we will have trouble dealing with them." And he said to me, "No, Gerard, we will win. We will win. Come and eat with us." So I joined Mr. Zalkind and his family at their table. And when it came to trial and the judge had to decide who would win, The workers were in favor of Elco, and Elco won, against all odds. He really loved it. He liked the pre-deal pressure and the exhilaration at the end of the deal. He recognized the trend of China and India. He actually wanted to produce the products in India at first. At the same time, the management was with our subsidiary in Australia. And they read somewhere that there was a factory in China that was being closed. I call Gershon, I tell him, listen, I don't know what we're looking for in India. There's a factory here which is nicer than the one we have in Israel, and I never saw anything like it. And everything is ready. Just turn on the switch. We bought the factory for a price of maybe 10 cents on the dollar. And so the factory, within a quarter or two, became a very profitable factory for us. They always laughed at me. On every balance sheet I would write, "This is the 42nd quarter that has improved compared to the same quarter last year. This is the 52nd quarter." So it was for 60 quarters. For 60 quarters in a row, Electra had better results than the same quarter of the previous year. With success came unrestrained appetite. In 2007, just moments before the bubble burst in the United States and after that throughout Europe, the portfolio doubled. Doubling for any company, even if it's a strong company, is not a healthy or a proper thing. The real estate boom was still there, and it met Electra in, as Gershon called it, a gold rush. In 2008, suddenly there are no buyers, only sellers. Companies are bankrupt, our traders are bankrupt. Banks are starting to take some of our assets in Germany, England, and we're in trouble. He had the strength to decide on extremely fateful matters in a very courageous way. I thought, you can't sell a life's work. That a factory like that's one of the most sophisticated enterprises in the world in this field, you just don't sell. But he sold it, and he was right. He made a very cold decision that not many would make when it comes to a life's work. In the state of Israel, there are ups and downs, and it was pretty obvious that we would have to say goodbye to this factory. We started the process of selling in 2008. And I see the attorneys who by nature are delaying the signing and arguing for another comma and another comma, and suddenly I get a call from my dad, and he tells me, listen, take Thomas. That was the manager from the other side. And whatever Thomas wants, you say yes to him. He tells you something and you tell him yes. I said to him, what happened? And he tells me, Lehman Brothers are going to go bankrupt. Do it fast because tomorrow the world won't be the same. So I went to Thomas and I told him, listen, we have a flight soon. We have to go to Israel. Catch your lawyer, get in there, and within 15-20 minutes, we signed and got on the flight. I'm pretty sure that if it hadn't been signed on that day, it would not have been signed at all. 2008 is something we need to teach future generations. He called us into the room and told us, gentlemen, I don't teach hairdressing. We're not doing haircuts. Take all of the assets and use everything you can. Debts must be paid. We worked very aggressively to start reducing the portfolio, making sure that we paid back the debts to the banks and the bondholders. But on the other hand, he recognized that there are once-in-a-lifetime opportunities in the U.S. real estate market. You know, we talked to the banks and so on. They thought we were completely insane. Everyone who has a quarter of a piece of real estate in America wants to get rid of it. and Gershon suddenly thinks it might be the time to buy. And we decided we were going to invest at a time when everyone ran away. To go and invest $100 million in apartments in the southeastern United States. A business that produced a truly phenomenal return. We brought Elco to where it is today, a company that does not owe bondholders or banks a penny. This path keeps us going. It's the course Gershon outlined for us. I don't think a day goes by without me thinking about him, especially since we have his picture in the conference room. And he's always looking at me, with a shrewd, cynical smile at the world about how to do business. Gershon in his later days saw his life's work the most powerful it ever was. I think he was very proud. He gave me a great life, a life full of interest, and it was always so much fun. He helped me to really believe in what I was doing, and being honest and true to yourself. Many times I sit there thinking, what would he do in this situation? How would he behave? I sometimes sit and watch and laugh so much because I remember all kinds of situations. I only remember him with his smile. We were always talking and he had a smile, a good smile. He used to tell us that he loved France and he really knew French history better than I did. To this day, I thank God for Gershon's decision and the privilege I had to work with him for nearly 20 years.
Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. C'est payé